Hey everyone, welcome to Darkling Alley. We're back for episode 2 of our Alan Wake post-gameplay discussion and recap. So let's get started.
Okay, 3 years ago, or so it says. We're going to find some cool things in here, I think. Okay, what I'm focusing on right now is the key, because it looks exactly identical to the one that he's going to get from Rusty later. And the typewriter bag that Alice used in the beginning of the game. And just looking around her room, we know she's afraid of the dark, but she has absolutely zero lamps, no ceiling lamps, see? No lamps, no lighting at all besides whatever she's working on. So you'll also notice that there are no pictures of the two of them together. There are no wedding photos. There's nothing. I don't know. Did you notice that when you were playing? That
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a whole lot of stuff in there, and it's not revealed to us whether or not they just moved in or anything like that. They have this TV in a box right there, but there's no pictures of them together. Mm-hmm. And there's always just one place setting at the table, so it always looks like only one person eats there. And it's kind of the same thing with the bed. Mm-hmm. Oh, this was fun. The Parliament Tower. We did a video on this about 4 months ago, and we addressed that. And there's some cool information in there, too, that we talk about that's also in our Every Year is 2010. So watch them. It's worth it. And we have the Tom Zane books in the closet. And I did make sure to brighten up the picture and make sure that those were the Tom Zane books. So those are for sure. And yeah, we find out here that Barry and Alice do not get along, and we'll find out later to what extent. So now we see the two of them having a loving moment, and they, seem like they're happy. And he tells her the story about the clicker, and he gives it to her. But the most important thing is that we're not told how to interpret this or why this is important. Like, this whole section is not narrated. And that's really an important point. So, okay, while he's being examined by Dr. Nelson, he has the flashbacks, the visions, and they do include Alice. Alan seems to know what people will do in any situation. So, like, for instance, like when he just said that the doctor would send him to a hospital for tests. Before he said that, he said that the sheriff would put him in jail and not help him look for Alice or something like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's already got it figured out what each character will do. Absolute. Like, this is what they're going to do. This is what's going to happen. There's no room for, like, what ifs or maybes. So that's something that I kind of caught on to that I think is going to be important for the story later on. And again, looking at the 2010 calendars that are all littered all over the place, including the flashbacks.
And here we see Cynthia Weaver, the sheriff's station. But once again, she doesn't acknowledge Alan as anyone of significance.
She's not like, I've been waiting forever for you. This is the second chance she's had, though.
Yeah.
Remember the diner.
That's right. Yeah, all she's doing is just checking the lights.
And then Deputy Grant goes and then explains that Cynthia used to be the editor of the newspaper. And she kind of says, like, back in her day. So it sounds like it was quite a while ago. But that she wrote about all kinds of strange things. And that's important to keep in mind as well. There's so many things we're going to say it's important to keep in mind. It's just that they connect later to things. And a lot of these things are not going to be really new to Alan Wake fans. But some of them might be. Some of them, like I said, we try to talk a lot about things that we don't hear.
And then here, too, Alan looks at the missing persons posters. Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of them. And none of them appear to be locals either.
No, they're all like campers.
Yeah.
And a guy that wins prizes or whatever. He wins contests.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to focus on the FBC letter there, but there is a letter from the FBC to Sheriff Breaker with a notice from Sheriff Breaker to ask her dad about it. That was not in the first game, and I wish it had been, but I guess they just weren't there yet. Remedy hadn't, figured that part out yet or decided where they wanted to put it.
Right.
Okay, so on this part, I don't know if you just saw, but Alan's phone, it's working. We did point this out. Again, we're trying to stick with what we pointed out in our gameplay. His phone is working. It has a time. The time is different from any clock that does have hands, and it doesn't get a signal. His phone, like when he just looked at it, there is absolutely no signal. He's not supposed to be getting phone calls or texts or anything like that, but he does throughout the whole game. And somehow his phone seems to survive, like dives into the water.
Yeah.
all that good stuff that would probably just like thrash anyone else's phone. So he's got a magic phone. And the man who just called, of course, says he has Alice. So he is at this point a kidnapper. Now, during this section of gameplay, we noticed on the day that we actually recorded this that on the floor there, in the lobby area, there's a hexagram, and hexagrams aren't uncommon. They're typical sheriff's badges, but there's backstory behind them. There's a lot of history behind the hexagram for protection, for, they're used as talismans, but they're also used in the occult and in things like rituals and spells and things like that or whatever. There's a lot of different ways to use them now. We know the Cult of the Tree, now we know this, that the Cult of the Tree uses 2 triangles as well for whatever their cause is. But the way they're using it here is a hexagram, 2 triangles. It's more like for protection, is what it seems like to me. Now, fun part is coming up with the guy that's in jail yelling, Walter, which we actually did see at the beginning of the game walking down the street when Alan and Alice drove off. It's just kind of hard to spot him, but he's in here freaking out. He obviously, it sounds like he has experienced some of the same things that Alan has. Alan seems to understand what he's going through and turns on the lights. Well, the player does. But he does talk about here that he believes that his friend Danny wasn't Danny.
That wasn't Danny. No, sir. It only looked like him. You want to know who it really was? I'll tell you who it really was. It was a goddamn space alien!
If you remember us focusing in on the newspaper in the diner, it was talking about strange lights in the sky, possibly UFOs that were scaring the townspeople. I think that, maybe that has something to do with his theory about a space alien. This was fun. Okay, so Alan is out there right outside of the sheriff's office. Now, again, on the same day that we caught the hexagram, we also caught this little thing. She's in there and she's doing some kind of animation. She's going through this strange animation cycle that she really doesn't need. This is not necessary. And as a matter of fact, it would be better if she were not in her office because he's got to kick down that board to get into that area. How is she not going to hear him, right? But in any case, she's in there and she's like doing these hand motions, and I don't know if that's supposed to be some type of protective spell, like Pat Main was talking about at the beginning. He's like, step outside for a spell. I don't know. We don't know enough about Bright Falls yet at this point to know. I think we're going to find out in part 2, though. Up to this point, Sheriff Breaker has been very lenient with Alan. He's allowed to leave there with a revolver, but she did take the rest of his weapons and ammo and lock them up in her office, didn't she? Which is to be expected, but yeah, he did somehow get away with the revolver, and that's what he takes with him that night to Lover's Peak. So he's not completely without protection. And yeah, every year at Deerfest they shoot up the town. That's the radio that he just got done listening to talks about that. Pat Main. It's like, hey, everybody, just like save it for the shooting contest or something. Because I guess every year the town just gets thrashed, which is another strange thing. So Alan gets this phone call from Barry. Barry is there. He's been there, I don't know for how long, but he has had enough time to stop at the diner and talk to Rose, and they talked about the manuscript, and I don't know what else, but that's a nightmare page, I believe, that you can only get on nightmare mode. So Barry had, after a week, instead of contacting the authorities, he just hops on a plane and comes to Bright Falls. So he is going to come rescue Alan from himself, I guess. And we get another writer in the cabin. This is a good one. So a writer is a light, reveals the world of his story from darkness, shapes it from nothingness. And I think that's an important, really important thing to remember when, because I tend to hear a lot of a writer can't make something from nothing. And I think a large part of that is true. But in fiction, that's exactly what you do, is you make something from nothing. It's just ideas. Right, in Alan Wake, it's a matter of sussing out what is ideas and what is not. That's the fun of it. And during this conversation with Hartman, why he doesn't become a person of interest, I don't know. When it comes to Alice's disappearance, he admits to knowing her, to talking to her, to inviting her to Bright Falls, but as far as we know, he's not even considered someone that could be involved in her disappearance. That is, I don't think, a huge deal, but it is something that I thought was strange.
Yeah.
Now here's something I thought was kind of weird, and that is Alan still has this disdain for Rose. He just does not like her, and I don't know why. He's supposed to not even remember her right now. It's kind of like, why does he just dislike this person who's, I mean, she's not even freaking out, right? Like she did in the diner. She's not like, oh my God, Alan Wake. She's just talking casual. So I don't know. Alan's not nice to her. He doesn't like her for some reason, and it's never really revealed why. Okay, and there is the key that is identical to the one that we just saw in his apartment in the flashback. Whether it means anything or not, I don't know. Maybe all keys look the same in this game, but I doubt it. It's I think it's something that, you know what, I can't go there. I can't go there because I have Alan's writing analysis that I'm doing, and I think I think I should just leave it alone. Okay, now here's where the Within Side book starts showing up. The spiral, and of course we see that spiral on his door at the Ocean View Motel. We're going to start seeing that everywhere now.
And then again here, you see another clock with no hands.
No hands, no time. And we do mention that, and I believe we mentioned it early on. Actually, it's kind of right in the middle of the game, roughly, that we do mention why we think that there are no hands. I believe it's also in our video, the every year is 2010. Every year is 2010 is really, it was one of my favorite videos to do. But there's a lot of good information in there about time and about kind of, I guess, his writing. Brings up some of this stuff. It's worth the watch. Yeah, so here's a manuscript page this time, outlining how Barry and Alice don't get along. That's got to be frustrating for Alan. His wife and his best friend are always fighting over him and his work. Okay, so on the way to Lover's Peak, Alan stops by a couple of cabins that are obviously abandoned, and there's another episode of Night Springs that comes on in this particular cabin, and again, I would love to go through the Night Springs stuff, but we just really don't have the time. This one is, what is it, The Man in the Mirror, and it has the whole kind of like Mr. Scratch thing, the evil doppelganger. It's a good one to watch. I really enjoy it. I like the shirt that the guy's wearing. It, I think it's like, I'm awake. So yeah, lots of good stuff in these episodes here. Okay, this is a good page here because this indicates to us that the author is omniscient or all-knowing. These are things that Alan shouldn't know. So why he's getting these is going to be up for interpretation because he's either written these people as characters or one of them is a character. I mean, we know that Cauldron Lake is a place of power, and he's supposed to be there right now writing this stuff, and it's supposed to be coming true. But take that away, and you have a writer who knows everything. Everyone's thoughts, feelings, emotions, past, present, maybe even the future. These are manuscript pages to pay attention to. So Alan finds another manuscript page of the same type. He has some flashes or images of Alice being taken by the dark presence again, the cabin, and Zane holding a stack of his manuscript pages. And then Alan hears the visitor center getting attacked by the dark presence. Alan finds out that Rusty has a manuscript page, and it was of him being attacked by the dark presence. So he knew ahead of time what was going to happen. At least he had read that something like that was going to happen, and then it came true. So now Alan is there, and he's finding this out. So Alan obviously is not the only one finding manuscript pages. Now Alan needs to turn on the lights to save Rusty, but unfortunately he's too late, and Rusty is taken by the Taken. So poor Rusty, he didn't do anything either. It's like always the really innocent people that like are the nicest, and they get taken. So. So now Alan gets a call from Barry, who's like crapping his pants because he's watching this happen from the cabin. He sees the dark presence attack the visitor center, and so he knows now something's going on. So he believes Alan that there's some kind of paranormal or supernatural thing going on, but you know, he still believes Alice is missing, but now he believes Alan more about what he's been telling him has been happening with the Taken.
And here's Moonshine Cave. The sign says, site of frequent bootlegger activity throughout Prohibition, 1919 to 1933.
So Alan comes across this giant like tree trunk that's been cut, and it has the rings, and it's got timelines of all these different events. But the problem is that like they're all kind of out of order and on both sides. I don't know how that happens, but it is kind of strange how it's different on each side. So I don't know, might be that whole parallel universe thing or alternate reality. So we talk about Alan's first meeting with Mott. And what we're going to do right now is just let that play out. And since we have subtitles on, that will be really helpful. And then we'll talk about what he says after that. So we'll just let it play through right now.
Come on, we gotta get moving. More of them coming. That flashlight's kid stuff. The flares will keep the bastards away.
You can see them too?
Hell, of course I see them. Come on, we gotta move.
Why?
Because that's the way the story goes.
Yeah, but...
Let's move!
Okay, so that's what it is right there. Mott says to him, that's the way the story goes. And Alan says, yeah, but... And then Mott cuts him off. So just the fact that Alan said, yeah, it's like he's acknowledging that he knows that that's how the story goes. So something to take into consideration when trying to determine what is his writing and what is not. So we'll play some more of their dialogue too, right here, because sometimes it's just easier to hear it.
Let's cut the act now. Where's my wife?
I knew you were gonna say that. I read it all before. You're a hell of a writer. Congratulations. You're gonna bring about something glorious and terrible once we get you some proper editorial control.
What the hell are you talking about? Where's Alice?
I want the entire manuscript, or she's gonna suffer bad.
You touch her and I'll...
Okay, so we know now, and I know we didn't include it in this video, but we know now that him and Alan, like, they read the same page, or at least similar pages, because Alan picked one up that had that exact sentence in it where he says, you know, let's cut the act, where's my wife? It gets to a part where he talks about he wanted to punch Mott, but it didn't say if he followed through with it, but I guess he did. Turns out he did. I don't think Mott was expecting it either. So after getting separated, Alan gets a call from Mott demanding the manuscript, and Alan tells him that he still needs to write the ending, and that he needs at least a week to do it, but Mott gives him 2 days. At this point, Alan has not found a manuscript page that explains any of this. He also hasn't seen any episodes of The Writer in the Cabin or anything that mentions this scenario. And it's also really early, so Alan hasn't even found nowhere near enough manuscript pages that would make up a complete or near complete manuscript. So there are still future events that have been written but have not yet been played out. And this could be the reason why Alan can't write when he tries. He experiences painful physical reactions when he tries to type or put pen to paper. And as far as I'm concerned, unless he just blurted out the first thing that came to mind when talking to Mott, and it happened to be correct, there's no way he should know that he still has to write the ending.
And so the next morning, Alan sends Barry to town to ask about Mott and to try tracking him down. And while in town, Barry gets a call from Rose, who sounds strange, but she says she found the manuscript pages. And then here back at the cabin, he tries to write but can't, as we just mentioned.
Yeah, and it really pisses him off, too.
Apparently.
I would be mad, too.
Yeah.
But honestly, like I said, I think it's because he can't.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's already been written, and he can't. He's got to go back to the cabin in this case. You know, in this story, he's got to go back to the cabin in order to do anything, change anything, write the ending, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, well, that's all for episode 2. Hope you'll join us for episode 3. Darkling Alley, out.